everyone, and welcome to the Cervena Barva Press and Nixes Mate books poetry reading. We have two poets tonight reading for Nixes Mate, and it's Eileen Cleary and Christine Jones, and two reading from Cervena Barva Press, Irina Mashinski and Brad Rose. I would like to turn it over to Nixes Mate, to Annie Pluto, who's one of the editors, along with Michael McInnes, and she'll be introducing the readers. So I turn it over to Annie.
Thank you, Gloria, and thanks for inviting us. So our first reader from Nixes Mate will be Eileen Cleary. And Eileen Cleary is the author of Child Ward of the Commonwealth, 2019, and 2 a.m. with Keats, Nixes Mate Books, 2021. In addition, she co-edited the anthology Voices Amidst the Virus, the featured text at the 2021 Michigan State University Filmetry Festival, and founded and is the editor-in-chief of Lily Poetry Review and Lily Poetry Review Books. Eileen's recent work is included or forthcoming in SWIIM Everyday, West Texas Literary Review, Sugar House Review, and Tree Line's 21st Century American Poetry, out through Grayson Books. So I bring you Eileen Cleary.
Thank you so much, Annie, and thank you, Gloria Mindock. Thank you both for the invitation, and I look forward to hearing the other three poets read. I'm very excited, and thanks everyone for being here. I'm going to open with a poem by Gloria Mindock, who has done so much for all of us in Massachusetts and far beyond the poetry world. And this poem is somewhat of a prayer or a plea. And since when we pray aloud, God hears us twice, I will read Gloria Mindock's Crows. The crows are perched on the back fence, warning me of death, graceful in their waiting, like my mother and her mother, before her, after death. The birds bring gifts to help with mourning. When life is gone, the crows know that everything ends up in the abyss, guarding the transition, the abandoning of earth. Through all the grief, memories scatter in the grass as I walk and they chatter. Give me my brothers back, my mom, to live an infinite life among us, images returning before they disappear once more. A crossroad where we all connect, feeling the same air. And I'm going to follow that with a poem by Annie Pluto. And she wrote this for Gloria Mindock. And it's lovely to have such two fine literary citizens and poets. Mother Tender for Gloria Mindock by Anne Elizabeth Pluto. The bread in the forest is all eaten by birds. The path back home will flow without words. The darkest silence will be the picture of her. How you choose without choosing to remember her best. The laugh you will never stop to forget. The hopeful place where there can never be regret. The smell of her books. The chances you took. The final look backwards. Mother Tender, what you will never fail to remember remains. And I think that this poem that I'll read of my own speaks a little bit to Gloria and Annie's poems, Body and Soul. Say you don't break into blossom, or that your wilding is not a gallop into dawn, unfenced and skinless. Say you nestle into your pillowed flesh, endure being human. You are velvet, blooded and exquisite. Take this bread and eat it. Here is your temple. Here the wafer of separation vanishes upon the tongue. And I'm going to read a poem called Beginning with a Quote by Anne Bradstreet, or Lines Immortalized in the Mirror. I am obnoxious to each copying tongue who says my hand a needle better fits. Page and pen long favor men, let's admit, over woman of equal ink. These same woman tote prattling toddlers to minivans, scan for wolves after stringing ships as second fiddles. Must they wonder how they'll be savaged, plump their exquisite bodies lest they attract? One summer in Holbrook, a man closed in on me, pushed me into a roadside ditch, quarter-mile from my home. It could have been any distance, and he might have tracked any to attack. Same man on the news next week after pommeling someone else. Baton passed in night zones, mano a mano. And wasn't this poem about women's words, sans, hand over mouth? Past the binary 1600s, men versus women, men versus Eve's sin, men versus life-size dummies versus unschooled mannequins. And did you refer to a better fit? Oh my, women's words bog the gut and glut the mind. She needs a list of reputable topics: man, God, child. Nothing too wild, nothing too gentle, for all that's holy, nothing sentimental. If in a poem a man finds a naked starling, its gaping orange hunger, he's free to fashion feeding sticks from coffee straws. But a woman must bury that darling. She must not coddle the offspring of her feeble brain, her thoughts tripped before the front door's frame. Must men be men and women have no claim? A man writes of love and ruins, crumbling architecture in his chest. Such fidelity. For this to be self-pity, he would be she. If she'd only obey, she'd be given more to say. Today, another poet vanished, her voice vanquished in plain sight. Honor the godly hunter who mounted her on the wall with a pushpin through her throat. And now just a little turn. The stamp collector. The hobbyist presses a stamp to a glassine sleeve, a raised tidy rose in a blank leaf. He warns his cat, no diplomat, to mind its tongue, trusts his own aesthetics precisely, pastes each one. He orders a Siberian not to harass the mailman, lest he dropped his tiny masterpieces. For the same reason, he side-eyes wild turkeys so they don't kamikaze. Through his window, an oak's become a weather vane. No delivery in a hurricane, enough to drive a philatelist insane. Undeterred, he's not afraid of any god who chains his cousin to a rock, then sicks an eagle on his liver. No god who turns his wife into a fly because he can't forgive her. Zeus, fall back while you can. Lay down your thunderbolt. Leave behind the envelope. I spoke with a deer by winter in Holly Ridge. Midday, while my rescue dog, fawn-tinged, cervine, stood mute, and to my surprise, discreet in the way she paused, her head still posed like a reading table, her eyes set to deer, the deer in no rush, transfixed near the curb. Did she grok my desire, her well-being? At ease, she sought no leaf litter, no camouflage tree, no unlit shadow to outshadow her underbelly. One must talk to deer as if they are a painting, only without the benefit of tombstone labels. The artist can see you in the masterpiece. Like any good artist, he has vanished. Let imagination finish. I do. The deer knows my hard night at work, knows I'm walking off another hard luck story. A quarter-mile down the road, a cape house I folded from paper somehow outlasted 30 years of rain. I'm writing a lullaby for a bright-eyed girl with lilacs on her romper, for all newborns who need soothing, May they never have to outrun their hearts. The deer knows my tenderest secrets about taming and renaming the wild mobs, peace flags over bomb basilicas. Today, the deer translates me to myself, says my name means light, and for this minute she is none of my dead. And I'm just going to close with a poem called Sun Guzzle with Burnt Out Shures, after Dorian Lux. Red in the face the first time I faced it, the sun, hanging since before the first someone. The sun dipping amber fingers into dewy cool lawns, a warming cabinet for grass blankets, the sun, call it day star, luminous over hayfields, loosed in the furs of chipmunk, honey, homespun sun, a taffeta dress stitched with lemon zest, rested in the ocean blue backdrop, dear sun, like a frantic greenhouse of a blind spot when it comes to what's too hot, smothering one, I love you like a child, though you scorch me, O variant of Helen, for what's left of eternity. Thank you.
Thank you, Eileen. Thank you so much. So our next reader is Christine Jones. Christine Jones lives in Orleans, Massachusetts, and is the author of Now Calls Me Daughter, Nixes Mate Books 2022, and Girl Without a Shirt, Finishing Line Press 2020. She is also the co-editor of the anthology Voices Amidst the Virus, Poets Respond to the Pandemic, Lily Poetry Review Books 2020. She is the founder, editor-in-chief of Poems to Go, and associate editor of Lily Poetry Review. Her poetry can be found in numerous journals and anthologies in print and online. We bring you Christine Jones.
Thank you. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Annie. And thank you, Eileen, for giving us the honors of reading a poem from each of them. It's such a wonderful way to open up. So I'm going to read a few poems, just two from my first collection, a few from the collection from Nixes Mates, and then a few from some of my newer work. And they really kind of follow, I find my poems kind of follow a similar theme. And the two main themes are the ocean and my mother, two of my greatest teachers, frankly. So I will open up the first poem from Girl Without a Shirt. Early morning swim at Ballston Beach. My hand slips between the current sea. Oh, gold swell secure me. What lurks below is large, and though quiet looms thick-skinned and sinewy, seeking fat to grab and thrash for fuel, for temper. I lost my wit for months, one breast taken, a prefab in its place, rigid, scathing against the soft scape of a heart abridged. I'm more than half full now, and seasoned with a coarse-cut salt. More tender for the hunter, yes, but how else to exist in this glide and thrust? Terrified of any sharp thing razoring my veins, yet unwilling to miss the cold flush of this wave. Apex predator, how fast it arrows, how exact it aims. And then in my earlier collection, it was really starting to see that, like, what was kind of happening with my mom. So this is one of the earlier poems, and then my next collection is all about her. Hard to imagine birds dying of old age. My mother watches from the window, fixated as a calico cat perched on her suede chair, the garland of robins on her magnolia tree. The thing she says she'll miss the most when she's gone. The birds delight for hours. One day, I trim the tree's branches but cut too much, and she cries, then prays with her daily word. I long for her to sing her songs in French again. I just wanted the sun to have a chance to rouse those staid walls, to leaven the raisin bread. And then Mom sort of progressed with Alzheimer's. And so this next collection by Nixes Mate, which is so beautifully designed, covered by Michael McGinnis and edited with the help of Annie, which I much appreciate. I move into a few poems about Mom and the progression with her Alzheimer's. After the move, we sort through a box full of shoes. My size, Mom says, wondering how they got there. She unfolds the checked blue blanket, my favorite color. How'd you know? I know she likes anything blue, also a crucifix in her kitchen, even if it is next to a holiday wreath on this warm day in June. And she offers me her ice cream bar, shaped like Mickey Mouse. She bites one ear, I bite the other. Dear Bella, I maneuver you into this cardboard box that will carry you back to the shelter where 2 weeks ago you seemed the perfect menu for Mom to love, because she worries if the voice she hears at the foot of her bed is that of her husband, her father, or the neighbor building his shed. Every day she wipes your pee with a small towel, washes it in bleach on a large load setting. She wants to hold you tightly and always. How can she not be attached? Even when you scratch, when you bite. I'm sorry, Bella. None of this feels right. My 86-year-old father falls. Weeks after they moved, Dad went missing in her mind. What does anyone know of tangled filaments, of clustered bits, of beta amyloid, of savvy caregiving, of improvisation, of 62 years of marriage, of pints of whiskey, of a father struggling from a floor, a swelling bump on his head? Wondering who I'll be in my mother's newest script. I can be maybe ma tante Fleurette. And just to let you know, ma tante, my mom's French. Ma tante means my aunt, and you'll hear this throughout. Ma tante Fleurette from Quebec, wearing pale blue shoes, quilting ladies with peach hats. I'll have white peppermints in a bowl, though I won't know how to pretend her polio. Better if I'm ma tante Carmel, the Franciscan who traveled the world. I'll read to orphan children in Rome, canoe with the Inuits of Manitoba. Or I could be ma tante Rain, the nun who dwells in the convent by a pond where ducks feast on unholy host, leftover ends. I'll mend days sewing hems of sisters' habits. It won't be that bad. I'll smile and nod, say pardon. Mom will expect I can't hear, will repeat her stories about Mr. and Mrs. Honeybloom and the hand-me-downs she had to wear, 13th child. Or with luck, I'll stay Christine. She'll know my voice. She'll know the birthmark on my right cheek. Plaques and tangles. The day I was born, you had a fever and the umbilical cord was wrapped around my neck. You waited weeks to hold me to your breast. Now clustered and knotted proteins strangle you. You sometimes call me Megan or Helen, though you named me after Christ the Lord. You stand on the threshold, taking off your coat. Oh, hark, mother, sing me into what comes next. And now I'm going to just finish up with a few of some of my newer ones, which are leaning more towards the ocean. Although there are still plenty of mother poems that keep coming through as well. And with winter coming, my husband and I swim all year round. And I often get the question, why do you swim in the winter? And this is a poem to answer that. Why I swim the bay in winter. It's joy, desire, the long hot shower, the green, the blue, the gray, the wave, the calm, the chop, the hint of sun, the planetary edged uneven shore, the salt, the lift, the half-eye views, M's silhouette, figure line of dunes, the kick, the pull, the thrush, purple particles of sand, a washing machine-like thrust, the flats, curves, the cold chill sting, the warming, quiet, muffled, bubbles, words found, new worlds, the fairground of briny extraterrestrials, the abyss, blurred goggles, the radical acceptance of nothingness, the knowing I can just stand up. And this is for one of our dear friends, Gloria Monahan, another poet who loves persona poems. And whenever I've taken a workshop with her, she always challenges me to write persona poems, which I don't particularly like to do, but this one's for Gloria. Horseshoe crab's address at Rocky Point. Cats have their 9 lives, but I have my 9 eyes. 2 devour the shallows for a mate, activate when thousands of my laid eggers wake. Underbelly vision steers me from silt below, and tail sensors synchronize the shifting ebbs and flows. 5 together hunt the ocean's night, side-eye sharks and greedy gulls, scavenge the sandy beat for smaller crabs than me. You, yourself bigger, scavenge me, but my eyes uncover the new moon's light. Never forget, I am millions of years before your time. Step aside. Forgiveness. A windblown daffodil withholding its bloom carries on all season. I arrange my desires in a vase. Each stem leans into a distant view where they become dune grass. Spirit means wind, means air, means breath, means I'm learning to imagine I exist as a gull skimming the ocean. See above and below. Love, even when. And I will close this last poem, which is a glossa. And for those of you that aren't familiar with what a glossa is, it is when you take an excerpt from another's writing and then you create the stanzas, and then the first line of that excerpt becomes your last line of the first stanza, the second line becomes the last line of your second stanza, and so forth. And this is the excerpt that I took from Philip Booth's poem titled Sea Level. For my halo, and when the tide came, simply keep walking across, but I'm here, who I am, given. Prostrate in the channel of the bay, coursing with the current inches above a planetary terrain, purplish grains, my carnal brush against its mogul sweeps me heavenward. Silver minnows, for my halo, and when the tide came, I came too, expanded into stillness, a rush delighted, fistfuls of grit ground the split, child of heaven, child of earth. My matter in this fluid blue field simply keeps walking across. Still, curious claws and pirouette probe, but miss just barely my cardinal belly. The crab's name is Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. He knows how the deep green light grows, how the sun reflects, disappears, but I'm here, who I am, given. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. And now I'll introduce two authors from Cervena Barva Press. Irina Mashinski is the author of The Naked World and Jornata, and of 11 books of poetry and essays in Russian. She is co-editor with Robert Chandler and Boris Dralik of the Penguin Book of Russian Poetry, Penguin Classics 2015. Her work has been translated into several languages and has appeared in Poetry International, World Literature Today, and elsewhere. And I'd like to show you her book. We didn't get to do a book launch, so I would like to, I don't know if you can see it. And maybe if she has it, she can hold it up. The light here is pretty bright. And so I give you Irina.
Thank you so much, Gloria, for having me, and thank you, Bubble, for publishing, making this book possible. And of course, I'm not the only author. I am actually one of the three authors. Two other authors are the beautiful, brilliant translators, Maria Blastein, who is here, and Boris Dralik, who is not here today. They're my dear friends, and they're absolutely remarkable translators whose sensitivity to minute changes in tone and rhythm and many facets of meaning is just remarkable. But I'm so used already, I'm spoiled already by working with them for quite a few years. So I will read just a few poems from this book, and I will just explain you see the Piranesi cover. Giornata, just in case someone might not know, is it's in Florence in the Middle Ages, in Renaissance. It's the term that refers to the 1 day worth of labor work. It's the area that is covered by plaster prepared for frescoes. So that's giornata, giorno, 1 day work, 1 day's work. So I will start with the poem that is titled Emigre. And of course, besides the obvious theme, there is this underlying theme of the whole book of the transition and relativity of one's origin, and many other things that we take for granted, but above everything, more than anything else, this constant conscious readjustment, effort of readjustment and transition, crossing borders. Emigre. You will hear, if you name some poets here are unnamed, but I'm sure you'll recognize them. And if you just Russia-related names are Yesenin is a Russian poet of the first part of the 20th century, and Vyborg is the suburb of Finnish, I would say, suburb of St. Petersburg. And of course, February and October are the two revolutions in 1917. One, a citizen of France, Romanian-born Germanic Jew, squinting in the sunshine, rewrote Yesenin in what happened to be German. Another, half German and half Brit from Vyborg, taken across to Finland on a child sled, just in time, truth to be told, before all those February Octobers and snowstorms, but didn't last in Finnish school, where he was bullied, this time as a Russian, and was thrust into a Swedish boarding school, elite, as they'd say now. So it was in Swedish that he began to crudely build up sideways, as if with blocks, in alien short lines. And suddenly the sun emerged. Poetry, train station galaxy, Ceylon's entire sun, a single undispersed, white, frightening light. And what about my parliament? Coursing in the scarlet cabriolet, suddenly at 22, in boring Kaunas, exiled by his father, lost to scarlet fever like a child. Another yearned for music, slitting the veins of crisscrossed window frames, neither Jew nor convert, and became a poet. Another, an Anglican turned Jesuit, abandoned by his family and himself, reached out to lines, awkward, fragile, slate pencil, timid marks, hikes with a friend along the hills of Wales, became a poet, and died in foreign, coldly passionate Dublin. His poems, strange and premature, hygienically burned by his Jesuit brothers, and I, a stranger, weep for him. Poetry, great desert, silk roots intersecting. No point in looking for your yester self. Your prayer, language, gender, orbit stayed the same, then have you been alive? Fall asleep one man and awake another. All burns the same down in the kiln, bizarrely intermixed. Go figure where the kindling comes from. So, of course, Pasternak and Celan and Hopkins and Parland, a lesser known poet of Finnish, Swedish, Russian, British, German origin. The other, one of the most interesting themes to me that I sort of explored, it just happened so, not consciously, of course, in this book, is this idea of the land in between land, the right-of-way land, which I understand not as a ownership, like the right-of-way I understand not as a, in a way of ownership and trespassing. I understand it as a nobody's land, these magical strips of land that have been mesmerizing me since I was a child on all continents. Those, you know, those clearings that are like railroads with those poles and wires. And I think they represent this this fact of void being the majority of the universe. There's more void than stuff in this universe. So this is something that interests me. And the first time I approached this idea was in the poem in the Right of Way, which was the first poem, Emigre, was translated by Maria Blastein. And this poem was translated Boris Draluk in The Right of Way. I'll read it in English and then I'll read it in Russian. It's short. However much the forest cuts the heart, the forest is our home. I've come back to the barren right of way for us to stay. With wolves, I will be numb, and you don't howl. Be woods, be numb. Learn how to know like wolves, to drink like birds, weave nests no more. I have to explain that there is this Russian proverb, one who lives with wolves must howl like the wolves. Как не царапай сердце лес, в лесу нам жить теперь, друг мой. На отчуждение полосу приду я, как домой. С волками я молчать, и ты не выть, и ты учись молчать. По волчьи знать, по птичьи пить, и больше гнезд не вить. And another poem is two parts. I see that I have time, so I'll probably read both the longer one, which I'll just read only in English, and the shorter one, both were translated by Maria Blastein in the right way again. A swath of public lands forlorn, hemmed in, soon into denim double stitch by a ravine. At either side, a colonnade, a smoking vineyard, a caustic wind yard. The shrub glows gold over that rose ravine. Another year awaits beyond the door unseen, and like the sunrise hot, harsh sunset tarries not. There is nothing left to hold. A cleft was left after a peak rose higher, but all that seared and burned is still a fire. From clouds down to the ground, ravine exists as one. Within it, life abounds. From a pebble down below to a birthmark on your brow, from a pebble laid on grandma's new headstone, to widow's black plateau, afloat in golden glow, you pour to overflow. For one who'd lost a waste and no man's strand, but the rushlight burns, it's steady till the end, and on these unclaimed heights, I live our unlived life. Where lands were reft, let gullies stitch them fast. Light's blinded outrider, last sunray hits the dust. Above the western range, the day prolongs the change, clenching its last gold leaf. But gold has finally set, and platinum released, and what was in the works by dusk resolved with ease. And look, a squirrel weaves between smooth trunks in flight, so needle-like, so light. So it's at sunset, those magical strips of land, they're especially mesmerizing and bothering at sunset, of course. And this second part of pretty much the twin poem to this is the right of way at sunset too. A barren wasteland lies mid one-eyed Sunday huts. Fierce Sunday sunset burns. The distant skies are dust. My resurrected voice, a caustic right of way, crushed blazing glass between two smoking towns, awakes, absorbs the tepid smoke. And okay, I was afraid that's overflew. I would just read the same little poem in Russian, if you don't mind. Пустыня меж домов, воскресных однооких, закат воскресный злой, в пыли небес далеких, воскресший голос мой. Ничейная земля, горючая, сырая, толченое стекло, внезапно догорая, меж городом одним и городом другим поглотит теплый дым. So you can, those of you who don't speak Russian probably can appreciate what a magical work Maria Blastein has done with the sound work and more of this poem. And the last poem I'll read is has to do with this main theme, I would think, of Giornata, this word that has been found and is gaining a foothold through this constant effort of so it's life after the loss, after life after grief, and it's something that has been it's known to all of us. And it's life that it's not that it's continuous, but it starts anew in a way. It gains a foothold, and it's a resilient effort of creation of life that starts growing in this pit, in this hole, H-O-L-E, anew. Geomorphology of a hole, H-O-L-E. Translated by Maria Blastein. Grief, wrenched out by the roots, left behind a hollow, a paleo hole, a void. A passing ant slides down its slope. A passing downpour soaks the humus and sprouts at once with the still cryptic roots, that tangle, mosses, then grass. That's how life begins, gains a foothold on this cavity planet, covers the slope as if with real greenness. The ashen soil crumbles, turns to dust. And just as it appears, a strong wind blows the ash-like continent away. But for a long time yet, the roots and the stout, fresh stems of the half-empty stalks, their hollow fifes, hold back the shape. That's how the whole matures, fiercely. Moss, pluro, toil, pumping oxygen, they can't not pump. And moss darkens, first by blotches, then by steps, a semblance of time, uneven emerald and jade. The mosses and the lichens lighter than wormwood, drenched by the moonlight. Rousseau, they must continue being. Following them come grasses, sage and sedge, untidy happiness here and there, in clumps and tufts, march in with their samurai hairdos and firmly hold on to the cooled off, crumbling slope. Then a moon ray seeks out a crater. It turns white with grass, reflecting their reflection. Thank you very much, and thank you, Gloria, again.
Thank you, Irina, and thank you for mentioning the translators. And I'm so happy Maria's here tonight. So wonderful translations, really. So our next reader is Brad Rose. He's the author of 5 collections of poetry and flash fiction: Lucky Animals, No Wait, I Can Explain, Pink X-Ray, Detonations, and Momentary Turbulence. Word in Edgewise is forthcoming from Červená, and that will be later this year. Brad is also the author of 7 poetry chapbooks, among them Democracy of Secrets, An Evil Twin is Always in Good Company, and Funny You Should Ask. His website is www.bradrose.com, and I give you Brad.
Thanks very much, Gloria. Man, every time I go to these readings, this group is really unbelievably good. So you'll have to bear with me. I'm going to read some persona poems. They're prose poems. They're 1 paragraph each. I'm going to do 6 or 7 of them. And the first one is called School Picnic. The ants brought their own lunch, and who can blame them? We should give them the benefit of the doubt, at least until the poison takes effect. Meanwhile, the birds, those feathered heathens, cut down the trees. No, just the tall ones. Evidently, the sky is the limit. Mr. Jackson, our 8th grade English teacher, says subject, object, verb, and don't you ever forget it. Sure, it feels like a linguistic punishment, but it's a lot less stentorian than his usual didactic yodeling. All I can say is thank goodness for my secret powers. In my wicked chilly red wingtips, I'm twisting and shouting faster than the Saturday night church fire. Fortunately, it's never too late for dissociation. In fact, the World Economic Forum says you can still make globalization work for you. Evidently, there's a thriving market for human remains. Say, do you prefer cherry or apple pie with that? Lucky's Cadillac. Even though I was dressed in my most outgoing clothes, I failed my Myers-Briggs personality test. So afterwards, I bought the best unicycle money can buy. It even works in the rain. So far, no suspicion of foul play, although in the Tibetan Book of the Living it warns, carry only as much cash as you're willing to lose. Last week, I forgot to attend my memory workshop again, so now I'm making it up to myself by hearing voices in my sleep. I find that it's better if I don't let on. After all, who doesn't want something for nothing? You know how Hegel said, every idea extended into infinity becomes its own opposite? That's why I like to borrow Lucky's fire engine red Cadillac. No matter how high I turn up the air conditioning, sure enough, that damn car is still built to burn. This one's called Hat Store Window. Thanks to my invisibility cloak, I'm enjoying the darkness. You know me, if I could, I'd dance the night away. In fact, because I'm no longer afraid of the devil's cartoons, I'm planning a trip to the real Disneyland. In merely 3 short weeks, anyone on the internet can learn to speak a new language. It's a small world, after all. Just imagine your internal organs. Of course, not your appendix, that useless little finger buried deep in your slippery belly. That's much too ugly. Although, like extraterrestrial intelligence, there's got to be a logical explanation. You probably think you know exactly where this is going. Appearances can be deceiving. In my opinion, your dainty head belongs in a hat store window. So come on in, have a seat. Any seat. No, not that seat. Electric eels. Millions of Americans have been affected by identity theft. It's probably the greenhouse gases. Remember that time that I voted for the opposition robots? On election night, the Andromedan aliens called and complained. I hope they don't hold a grudge. Now I'm lying low, quiet as a catfish. Although sometimes I just can't help myself. I feel as animated as Dr. Frankenstein at the prospect of a thunderstorm. My electrician says life is one long, low-voltage electrocution until your bill comes due. Then everyone gets capital punishment. When I tell him all good things must come to an end, he says, no one enjoys being hit by lightning, Buster, except the eels. Dolls. This is from my book, Lucky Animals. Over the years, my house grew to be as big as a house. It's not an either-or question. Needless to say, there is safety in numbers and letters. Yesterday, Margene asked me, are you as disappointed in baggy, slouchy trousers as I am? Then it rained. I drove out to the doll cemetery, the one next to the toy lake. Fortunately, there were no survivors. Shark. Yesterday at the beach, it was so peaceful and soothing, like a dream, that I nearly forgot where I was, at least until all that splashing and flailing began. When the lifeguard jumped up and started to yell hysterically, it was hard to tell if he was shrieking, man-eating shark or man eating a shark. Fortunately, after I got out of the water and dried off, my jaws only hurt for a little while. And the last one is called New Neighborhood. You know those apartment-sized giraffes? Yeah, the housebroken ones with the shorter necks. They'll eat you out of house and home. Naturally, it's hard to tell whether they've got a scratch or an itch, but I like to agree with everyone. One size fits all is my motto. Last night, I took a walk in the dark rain, but the drops were so detailed I could hardly keep track. Everything is so left-handed in my new neighborhood, not like my old place on Rattlesnake Hill. No, it wasn't a problem there at all, as long as I wore my high-top snake stompers. Although, from now on, I'm only going to spend time with people who share my views of body positivity. Just because my TV shouts those secret messages at me doesn't mean I like to scare people I haven't met yet. Say, you don't think this t-shirt makes me look too muscular, do you? Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. And what a powerful, just wonderful night of work. Can we give the readers one more round of applause?